This is StormReel, a podcast about the intersection of people and weather, hosted by storm chasers Jeremy Hamann and me, Gabe Cox.
Welcome to StormReel, the podcast about the intersection of weather and people. I am your host, Jeremy Hamann, joined by my fellow host, Gabe Cox. Hey, Gabe, how's it going, man?
It is going great. Great to be on another episode. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah.
Got a fun guest.
Absolutely. You were telling me before we started recording, you're feeling a little cloudy in the brain. You were out chasing yesterday. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on going out, but stuff popped up close enough, and I decided to hit it. And man, solo chasing in Texas Hill Country while also trying to live stream to the news will mess with your mind.
Yeah.
I got home and I had the biggest migraine, and it took all night, literally until this morning for it to go away. So my brain's a little foggy, but it was a fun chase, successful chase. Didn't see a tornado because it was completely rain wrapped. The circulation was, and it was wrapped in at least tennis ball size hail. This thing was like glowing green blue. It was crazy.
Wow. But
had a couple of close encounters. Almost got it overrun by the hail. But yeah, fun chase day. Was able to successfully stream for the news, and made it home and slept in my own bed, which is always a win. Yeah,
that is always a win. And you were out near like Brady, Texas kind of area, Central Texas?
Yeah, a little bit south of there, around Mason, and then dove southeast of there into Fredericksburg, and then the storm chased me home for an hour and a half. So that was fun.
There you go. I love it. The chaser becomes the chased. Yeah, that's a chasing alone. That's something we talk about a little bit on the show of how challenging that is.
Yes.
And you're adding in live streaming, you're road navigating, you're looking at the radar. Yeah, that's very intense.
And with zero views in the hill country and roads that don't make sense. It's
goodness.
It was good times.
Yeah, the roads are not made to be chased out there for sure.
No.
For sure. Not like the nice grid out in like Nebraska or Kansas or something like that. Yeah,
give me that.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you got to get out and chase a little bit. Were you able to provide some streaming content for the local news?
Yeah, I mean, they were on wall-to-wall coverage because that tornado warning lasted a while, and then when that dissipated, another one went up further up the line. So that's awesome. They were on for a while, so they got to use quite a bit of me running away from a storm. So
that's sweet.
That's essentially what the content was.
Yeah, they're lucky to have you, man. That's so rad that you get to do that. That's super cool.
It's fun.
So if you're ever in Central Texas, you've got the news on to KXAN. Yeah. Gabe
That's
might
right,
be on.
KXAN.
Yeah.
Best in the biz.
Absolutely. That's so awesome. Well, I saw a funny Onion article that I thought I would share. I love The Onion. It's so funny. But I'll just read this like short little headline and article, and I related with it. I'm sure you relate with this too. But the headline is, Wise Oracle proclaims to all at barbecue that he felt a raindrop. This is from Little Rock, Arkansas. So here's the article. Reading the signs written in the world around him to divine the course of events as yet to unfold, wise local oracle Philip McKenna foresaw the arrival of ill weather at a neighborhood barbecue Monday and uttered a sharp warning to those gathered. Eyewitness said, "Uh-oh, I just felt a raindrop, guys," the sage prognosticator declared to all, holding aloft his dampened wrist as testimony to his omen as he gazed into the heavens and interpreted its silent teachings. "It's looking pretty gray. Maybe we ought to go get the food inside." At last report, the discovery of condensation falling from an air conditioner had unmasked McKenna as a false prophet.
That's fantastic.
And I immediately thought of that, and I was like, that would be me for sure, talking about telling people about the weather. But I also have like 4 or 5 like 18Z models in my head. I know what's going to happen. I have the latest high-res radar images.
Yes.
I have more info than that for sure. But that was like,
I can definitely connect to that.
Yeah, I'm that guy in the friend group, and I think a lot of people listening are probably that person in their friend group too. So,
oh, for sure.
Yes.
We've all been there.
Yes, 100%.
The informant.
Absolutely. I just thought that was silly. Love the onion. Well, let's bring in our wonderful guest today. Jen Walton is a Denver-based extreme nature chaser and photographer, communication strategist, and entrepreneur. Jen specializes in strategic communications and public relations with expertise in the communication of environmental change, extreme weather, and crisis response. Jen is a seasoned storm chaser and the founder of Girls Who Chase, an initiative which elevates the content and voices of female and female-identified storm chasers to inspire, empower, and equip girls and women globally to pursue the sciences, the weather, and their passions. Her storm chasing footage and photography has been seen in the Washington Post and Flaunt magazine, and on shows including Good Morning America, The Today Show, The Kelly Clarkson Show, and NBC. Welcome to the show, Jen Walton.
Wow, that was a hell of an intro. I'm like, who are they talking about? Thanks for having me, guys. It's great to talk to you. And actually, it's funny listening to you talk about Gabe's chase in Texas, because I finally got my chance around the Palo Duro Canyon area, which I have never personally had the opportunity to experience and may never again if it were up to me. Yeah, totally get what y'all are talking about down there. It's certainly tricky. And also, hail in Texas is something else, like next level, I would say.
It is next level. And for people who don't know about the Palo Duro Canyon, think of like flat, open Texas, like quintessential what you would think Tornado Alley, and then just throw this gouge of canyon straight down the middle with no roads.
Or cell coverage.
Or cell coverage. It's every chaser's nightmare is to watch a storm end up in that territory. It's not fun.
Yep. Now we know.
Man, we're so excited that you're here. It's been long overdue. We're glad to get you in on our, comeback season and get to chat with you and catch up. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has. I'm excited to be here with you guys. Your podcasting model really helped shape the Girls Who Chase podcast in some ways. Like the questions that you all ask and the level of conversation you encourage, I think, with your guests has been foundational for us as we worked through some of this stuff. So excited to be having this conversation with you directly.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool to hear. Thank you for saying that. We love Girls Who Chase, and so that's an honor to hear that for sure. Something we like to talk about on the show and ask our guests is their storm origin story, and like what activated maybe that latent gene that lives inside of us, all who get near crazy weather and natural events. But what was it that sparked in you to make you want to get near crazy environments and storms and volcanoes and things like that?
I don't have really a direct origin story. And I think, frankly, most of my interest wasn't particularly latent, but rather secondary / ignored for the bulk of my life for one reason or another. But one thing that I have discovered through meeting various chasers through Girls Who Chase is that those who don't have an origin story often start with sheer terror instead, and that is mine. So when I was little, like 5, 6 years old, I was growing up in the Southeast, and so a lot of nighttime thunderstorms in the Southeast, and I would drag a sleeping bag into my parents' bedroom at night because it was just too much for me to handle. And that went on probably until I was 9 or 10, and then at some point in there, I don't entirely recall the transition. It went from that to starting to want to peer outside and see lightning and just kind of see these things happen. But there just wasn't a ton to see in the Southeast, right? It's gray until you get a thunderstorm and then it's done, kind of. So that stayed that way for a chunk of my life. And I was one of those avid consumers of all the various sort of tornado chasing media, no matter what channel it was on, whether it was Storm Chasers or the various shows on the Weather Channel. A lot of times prior to those shows existing, I would just sit and watch the Weather Channel, even if it was just weather on the 8s. And my parents were like, what is wrong with this? What are we doing? You know,
we get it.
They would turn the TV on and it would be on the Weather Channel. And so we've all heard that story before too. So there was just a lot of that going on. But for whatever reason, it never really occurred to me to take it any further for a large chunk of my life. And I think that's why I'm so driven now to really dig out this kind of latent gene, Jeremy, that you referred to, especially for girls and women, because I think there are some stories that we tell ourselves about why we couldn't or shouldn't be doing this. But essentially, I just finally one day said, I've got to stop telling myself I can't do this. And then one day found an ad for a storm chasing tour on Facebook because I was following all the storm chasers. And so it just kind of popped up and caught myself saying, you can't do that. And I was like, where is this coming from? Like, I literally said that to myself, right? At the time, I was gainfully employed and able to take vacation and able to afford it. So I thought, okay, well, here are the experts, right? If you actually want to check this out, here are people who can get you to a storm and you can kind of dip your toe in the water and see if this really is for you the way you think it is. And then, just basically sent myself on that tour. And it was 2018. It was a pretty quiet year. So I think we saw a supercell or maybe two, but I spent the entire tour asking why. To the point where I was like following the tour guides around, just incessantly asking questions. And after a while was like, okay, clearly there's something here. And then that's really what kind of kicked off the monster, that and somehow managing to get myself on a tornado 2 weeks later in Colorado. So my first tornado was Prospect Valley, about 45 minutes from my house, June 19th, 2018. And the monster was born that day. I was like, more of this, please.
Yes.
So it started with fear and then sat for a long time and became a story of recognizing self-limiting, I think. And then, it's like the first step is admitting you have a problem. And after that, right, in many ways, you're your own solution. So getting out of your own way and saying yes to something that for whatever reason didn't seem like the right path changed everything.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? The self-imposed barriers we put for ourselves. And it can be in such a vast, there's so many different paths that can take and faces that can look like. But what is that? Because we all do it. I know everybody's connecting to that on a certain level, but I've dealt with that. Even just like solo storm chasing was this big thing that I was like, I can't do that, but I'll partner with somebody. And then when I had to do it and I was like, oh no, I can do this. And then, that almost prevented you from the last, 6-7 years of this journey you've been on, which has been crazy, which has touched so many people and opened up so many doors for so many people. I'm glad you pushed through that. That's awesome. That's such a cool origin story.
It's what drives everything behind Girls Who Chase, I think. And it's, I think the thing that really first instigated all of this was someone said to me, even if you think it's unimportant or nobody cares, your story matters, whatever that story is, because there's always someone who can relate or who is struggling with something similar, and just knowing that we're not alone in these things is everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that part of storytelling. And the more personal our storytelling gets, ironically, the more universal it becomes ultimately, right? The more honest we are, the more it can connect with those around us. That's really beautiful. Thank you for your story. That it's genuinely inspiring. And even, as I sit here today, I'm like, okay, what blocks do I still have? And what is like on the horizon that I can't even imagine, at this point. And that's a really, really, really wonderful reminder. We've mentioned it a few times now, Girls Who Chase. For those who don't know, could you give us a little bit of an explanation of what this organization is that you founded and run?
Absolutely. So my first few years chasing, I guess I should back up even from there. So my career and background, as you mentioned, is in the sciences, science and environmental, climate communication, that type of thing. So I've been steeped in culturally the world of the sciences now, really since the beginning of my career about 20 years ago. And consequently also all the various elements of culture around that, issues with misogyny and, struggles around things like if you don't have a certain background or capability or whatever, then there's a lack of respect inherent in some of the relationships. And so when I did decide to start storm chasing, I think I was a bit primed to be looking for either gender disparity or some of these issues because there's a lot of parallels between the worlds. Mm-hmm. In this case, it wasn't coming from chasers or male chasers specifically. It was a lot more subversive, I think is the right word. And it wasn't clear where it was coming from, but how it was manifesting was things like, if I chased with a guy and we both posted the same content, the guy would get major back pats, congrats, etc. And there was always an assumption that I had gotten there because of him. And then the other thing I noticed was that it was being perpetrated by media. And by media, I mean all media, social media, broadcast media, whatever, take your pick. I was also at that point talking with other women who were sort of harder to find when I started storm chasing. Like I kept meeting them over the course of my chasing and I was like, why didn't I see these people previously on social media or when I was following folks online or whatever? Why was it just less obvious that they were there? What is this about? And because of my communications background, I just couldn't shut that off in my brain, this sort of observing cultural patterns factor. And over time, it started to become clearer and clearer to me what was happening. And then one day I just finally snapped and said, that's it. I'm going to create an Instagram page that highlights the hard work of female storm chasers. So I started this page, and it was the act of starting the Instagram page that really became the energy that is now Girls Who Chase. And it was very clear after a short period of time that it wasn't going to cut it as an Instagram page. I was starting to get submissions from women internationally who storm chased, who were struggling with similar issues. And then I got my first message from a science teacher who taught 6th grade science, who said, I just want you to know that I found this page. I'm showing it to my students because I think weather is a great entree into science. And I want them to know that girls can do anything. And I thought,
wow.
People seem really interested, and it seems like more is needed. Shortly after that, I was joined by Melanie Metz, who is a longtime veteran storm chaser. They had a couple of years on the show Twister Sisters on Women's Entertainment Network. And she and I together launched a website and a Patreon group and a podcast and a promotional video that essentially sort of cemented the personality of the initiative. And at that point, I mean, the response was unbelievable, I would say. Not just storm chasers, but people who were weather enthusiasts. And then I started hearing from female broadcast meteorologists and other meteorologists writ large, and then ultimately kind of concentrically outward from there. I think the second element was when the media coverage started, which was not solicited, but certainly I think secondarily instrumental in taking it from kind of a storm chasing community size initiative to a global initiative. And it started out with the Washington Post. So we didn't start small, I should say. And shout out to Ian Livingston from Capital Weather Gang, who basically sent me a note and said, I think we might have a story here, and seemed to be correct in his assumption. And from there, it kind of grew exponentially over the next several months with, great background stories of other female chasers. And then ultimately, I found myself standing in front of a live audience on the Kelly Clarkson show in September.
That's bananas.
Yeah, well, yes, other than the part where I sort of forgot all the thoughts in my head. Sure. I mean, it was, I work in PR, but I'm used to being the person behind the person. Right. So it was just a lot for my little brain to handle at the time. But definitely, right, they flew me to New York and drove me around in black cars and then put me on the show. And I just remember thinking, okay, you've been handed a megaphone now, and thusly you hold responsibility. And the fact that someone like Kelly Clarkson would be interested in a little storm chasing initiative, to me, really cemented the part where, again, it's almost like a twofold effort here, right? One pillar is the women in STEM pillar, but the other is the empowerment pillar. And that's really, I think, what was resonating with people outside of weather and storm chasing, and women hearing these messages that are it doesn't matter if it's storm chasing, but if there's a thing that's for you and you are telling yourself you can't or shouldn't, or you're not going after it, even though you know what the thing is that will bring you joy, then it's time to make a change. So we tackled the education component. We now offer an annual day-long virtual storm chasing training 101 called Spring Training that has been in the multi-hundreds every year in terms of participation. 2024, we had about 600 people attend. Wow. So there's definitely interest out there. And then on the empowerment side, just looking at things like making sure people know they're not alone, raising some of these topics that are important to talk about, like self-limiting stories and putting barriers in front of yourself. And what does that look like? Talking about failure and handling failure, right? So let's say you do decide to storm chase and you have a crappy day, or you just completely bust and other people get a wedge or something somewhere. What does that mean? Does it mean you should quit, or that you're a crappy storm chaser, or that weather is humbling? And sometimes we all suck at this. So just things that don't necessarily get talked about in spaces like this. And the last is continuing that element of amplification. So partnering with networks to get more women on air so that it's a little bit more balanced in terms of showing the true diversity of who is in the storm chasing community and who is out there. And just helping women, either bring in new business or partners, or raise their profiles or whatever, right? So it's kind of a multifaceted effort now. And it's certainly evolved from its original, purpose. Now it encompasses a variety of types of diversity. And in a lot of ways, it's also the entire chase community. We have men who participate all the time. They've been instrumental in helping us talk about these things and having some hard conversations about how we got here and how, what the solution might be. And so that was a long answer to a short question, but for sure, we've got something significant here that the chase community has created. And I, in some ways, feel like I have become the home for it because of my skill set and my ability, but it is not mine, I don't own it, and it's kind of flowing through me in a way. So, and how do we just maintain that energy and make sure we're meeting the need, which continues to evolve?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I know Jeremy's social psychology brain is lit up right now.
100%. I just think I so connect with so much of the story. And in particular, I think Gabe and I, something that we talk about all the time, being more, I think, higher on the emotional intelligence spectrum in terms of, men who talk about these sorts of things and our feelings. And I just, so resonate with just the emotional realities of storm chasing and exposure, internet fame, quote unquote, how that can come really quick and really intense and maybe not be what you want or exactly, how you thought it would be. It's beautiful. Like it's such a lovely thing to be able to open up just vast conversations with huge groups of people who want to talk about the feelings of storm chasing, the feelings of failure, that you can experience after a long day on the road, and how painful that can be, expectations being shattered and things like that. So you've done just a really, really beautiful thing in enabling these conversations and tackling all of these different things like inherent biases and systemic thinking and bias, and it's really, really wonderful.
And I hope it continues. I think, we're talking at a time where the very foundation of weather right now is threatened. And so one of the things I think I did right, which wasn't intentional initially, was to not commit Girls Who Chase to any one specific outcome or path, but rather allow it to stay nimble and respond to the needs I feel like were arising out of whether it was the patterns of barriers to entry that we were seeing or the various issues that sort of cropped up over its lifetime. And I don't frankly entirely understand, and I think I'm probably not alone in this, exactly what it is we're dealing with right now. Politically, right? There's threats to just the field of science writ large, and particularly NOAA. And so I suspect that we may not even fully have seen the real reason for the existence of Girls Who Chase yet. And maybe this is it. But because there's so much uncertainty and nobody fully understands what we're up against, I'm kind of sitting and watching all of it right now to figure out what that may look like. We're one of the few initiatives that is not federally funded. And my purpose was to stay autonomous so that if we had things that needed to be said, we could indeed say them freely. We have a lot of really high profile partners now, like the American Meteorological Society is our title sponsor. So I certainly am careful and thoughtful in how we say things, but I'm becoming more and more suspicious that at some point we are going to have an important role to play here, and just figuring out what that looks like. So that's kind of where we're at, I think, right now.
Hey, dear listener, storm chasing and podcasting both cost money. And now that Gabe and I are back making podcasts regularly, we have a new way that you can support our show. If you look in the show notes, you'll see a link to be able to subscribe to our podcast. This will cost you $5 a month, and you will be rewarded with early access to our podcasts. You'll get each episode 2 days early as a $5 a month subscriber, and we will read your name on the podcast. This support means the world to us. We take our time out of our regular lives to make these episodes, and so just a little extra support would really, really mean the world to us. Thank you so much for listening and considering subscribing.
That nature of adaptation, I mean, that's just ingrained in storm chasing anyway.
True.
And life, I mean, we talk about it all the time on the podcast, like storm chasing is life. Like the lessons you learn are just a little more poignant in storm chasing, but they apply to all of life. And being able to adapt as your surroundings adapt, that is storm chasing, that is life. And I'm glad that you have that flexibility with Girls Who Chase, and it's going to take it into places you wouldn't expect as your environment changes. That's exciting.
It certainly has to date.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Talk to us about, I read something about your past a little bit, something that maybe helped you feel a little bit comfortable getting near, severe weather. You have a background in wildland firefighting. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I feel like I spent a chunk of my early career attempting to get as close to severe weather as I could without actually getting close to severe weather. And I landed in a bit of an emergency response space, and one of my specialties is crisis communication now. And so after my freshman year in college, I was pursuing an environmental science degree and wanted to get out and do some field work, and was interested in doing either like a volunteer gig with a national park or something of that nature, and ended up finding a program called the Southern Colorado Initiative, which I don't think exists anymore. And at that point, I had never been west of the Mississippi. So I didn't know the West at all, had no sense of what I was getting myself into, and found a volunteer role with the Comanche National Grassland in southeast Colorado. And it was a rangeland technician role and involved being on horseback all day. And I'm an avid equestrian, so I was like, sign me up. This sounds awesome. Well, it turns out the Forest Service trains anyone who comes their way to be wildland firefighters. So the next thing I knew, I found myself in wildland fire training. And my initial thought was, what the hell is this? Like, you gotta be kidding. And actually just fell in love. Just everything about it, being out on a fire line. I had the opportunity to work in several base camps. Should I stop to be like, let me introduce you to the gurgling in my office.
What is the gurgling in your office?
So my office is delightfully located right above the sump pump at our home, and it has been raining nonstop in Colorado, so the sump pump is very busy right now. So if you hear gurgling, it is not my stomach, I promise.
The sump pump is an honorary guest on this episode.
Yes, it's very, very busy today.
It's the noise of good news, because we need the rain here in Colorado.
No kidding. Amen. Anyway, so just having an opportunity to, shall we say, leave my comfort zone. I mean, it's very serious physical labor and can be also very challenging mentally. There were nights where we would pull up the night before they put us on the line and had to sleep in the truck because there was no base camp set up yet. And then, first thing in the morning, you're out there with a pack. So, and through that, I had the opportunity then to spend some time on large fire incidents in base camps working communications, which was really cool. So I think it really was the first step towards zeroing in that, okay, I'm pretty interested in this natural disaster type work. And even then, I think I knew that it probably wasn't going to ultimately be fire, but I didn't know exactly why or like what that thing was. But ironically spent, my first 2 seasons in southeast Colorado in areas that I now storm chase. Instead, I lived in La Junta.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've chased around that same area that you've been in as well. And it is wide open, beautiful country. Well, I'm just so inspired by your story. Just the trajectory of continuously pushing yourself into unknowns, and following that voice inside that you may or may not understand. What are you experiencing right now that might be the little voice that you understand or don't understand, the little edge of discomfort, in your life or career or adventures?
Oh, I love that question. One of the things that stepping into storm chasing has brought me, and kind of the evolution of Girls Who Chase, is over time, I've met a lot of people. And if you were to ask me, even up to a few years ago, what my dream job was, I used to always say that it was being in severe weather communication. Like, that was just, but when I would say that, in my head, what I was envisioning was sitting in the back of some field vehicle chasing tornadoes. And over the last couple of years, have found myself sitting in a Dow, Doppler on wheels, doing weather communication. And that was an opportunity that came about by being connected with Karen Kasiba through Girls Who Chase. Karen is the program manager for the Doppler on Wheels facility in Boulder. And I used to actually drive past their hangar where they kept the Dows for one of my jobs, and I would sort of hang out the window and stare at the Dows, and then have to like go into the office and do my job. And always had in my head somewhere that like I would just love to be able to work with them. And last year, just through a really random series of events, found myself as part of the Doppler on Wheels team doing a tornado research project in the field called the BEST project. Strangely enough, that happened to coincide with a record-breaking tornado event in Greenfield, Iowa, where I deployed a pod half mile in front of the EF4. Wow. That hit town. I could not explain to you to date, maybe never, how this sequence of events landed me in that moment, nor then, of course, how I went right into PR mode afterward and broke the news with NBC, which basically allowed me to do exactly what I've always wanted to do. And this year have had the opportunity to join the team again on a much larger project called Ice Chip. Please don't ask me what that acronym stands for, but it's a giant hail study, about 100 people, 20 institutions, including the Dows. And Jeremy, you asked about how I'm feeling, and there's two things I think that are circling in my mind and have been since the project started a couple of weeks ago. The two things are, one is severe imposter syndrome. Like, I don't understand why they chose me. How did I get here, right? I know people are fascinated by Dows, and a lot of people would love to have that opportunity. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't sit in there and think, this is just amazing. Like, just grateful to be here and have this opportunity and get to see and do the things I always dreamed of. I think the other is feeling completely in alignment with exactly where I'm supposed to be. But like, there's that little question in your mind of, do I deserve to be here, and why me, and all of that kind of stuff that really never, I mean, I had that with Girls Who Chase too. It just never goes away. So it's crazy. And that's why I keep telling people, don't stop dreaming. Even if like where you're sitting right now, it just seems impossible. Like, how could this possibly happen, right? The me that was driving past the Dow hangar, this was 2009, when I was driving past the Dow hangar with my head hanging out the window, thinking like, I wish that was my job, you know? And there was I couldn't find the right people. I couldn't figure out how to make it make sense. I am not a meteorologist, right? So I didn't have the skills. So I just gave up. Like, how do you do that, right? And then thinking about all the pieces that had to come together to bring me to this moment.
Incredible. You can't get more in like the inner sanctum of weatherdom than inside of the DAO, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Just you're there. It's the moving temple to weather. You know, it really
I love that.
is.
I might have to repeat that to them.
I remember seeing it last year too when you announced it. I was so amped for you because I started following you just before Girls Who Chase. I don't even remember how I started following you on Twitter. I think it was like, who's this female storm chaser who's asking really great questions about the culture we're in? And then watching Girls Who Chase and watching, your journey onto these talk shows and just like stuff just blew up. And then seeing it, like the culmination of it ending up on these research teams, I was amped. I was literally like fist bumping the air, like, yes, go Jen.
It's so validating in some ways because it does, like, you do need that little bit of, okay, yes, maybe you did make the right decision, or maybe this wasn't completely insane to like leave full time and go consult and do all these various things, right? And yeah, it also, I love storm chasing. I started chasing because I just love being out there, but having a specific contribution or purpose is really what sealed the deal, I think. For me, I felt that before Greenfield, but for sure have felt it since, that I got to be a part of something that was obviously horribly destructive. And yet at the same time, we're there for the right reason, for making a difference, that our research matters, and being able to place a pod in town to collect that data near a populated area is very rare. So just for some reason being given that opportunity, yeah. But if someone had said to me 10 years ago, okay, take your passion, take the thing that brings you joy, and take the thing you're good at and put it all in one place, what would that look like? I don't know, right? I don't think anybody knows. So that's what that did.
Yeah. You talking about imposter syndrome. I'm reminded of a story of Neil Armstrong was once quoted as saying that he had imposter syndrome even after he landed on the moon. Amazing. And he said, well, I just went where they sent me. Like, I'm just a pilot, and I was just like so struck that like, wow, like, yeah, it's all of us. And I really do believe that it's all of us that feel deeply, experience imposter syndrome. And it is evidence of a deep feeling nature. It's so painful, but it's a good sign as well.
I can't imagine not feeling it, actually. And I think it's like, it's one of those things that I've just learned over the years, where your choice is either to be comfortable all the time, which is boring for me, or to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, you kind of can't have both. But the question to be asking, in my opinion, is what is out of my comfort zone? What brings me joy? And what is the gap between those two things? What does it take to get there? What does that look like? And where am I right now? And how do I continue to take steps in that direction, even if it just seems ridiculously impossible for one reason or another? As long as you're moving, putting one foot in front of the other, that's really all that matters. And it might look different even every day. Like, some days you're like, nope, today is a sit on the couch and eat M&M's day, but still having that thought process going on, whatever that looks like, and not letting someone else tell you what that looks like either, because it's different for all of us. And I think we all can fall into that trap when we think someone else is more of an expert than we are, and yet nobody knows what they're doing in the end.
Exactly. No one knows. No one knows.
And I think in addition to like, you put one foot in front of the other, but you had the foresight to see opportunities pass in front of you, and that's half the battle, is being observant. Recognize the opportunities that come, and you can either let it pass by, or like you did, just say, sure, I'm going to grab onto this and see where it takes me for a minute.
Yep.
And it's taken you on so many different amazing paths. It's been awesome to watch.
And sometimes the question is just, how do I get involved? Mm-hmm. Like I've noticed, I've had a lot of conversations with folks recently, like, how did you get on the Dow team? Like, how do you get involved? And my short answer is, I asked. You know, and I know that it's intimidating, but it's always going to be no if you don't ask, you know? So, yeah, I just think it's important to say that out loud.
Yeah, I need to hear that, because I'm the type of person that it's like no is the worst thing I could hear in my life. And so I passed up so many opportunities for so long just because I was afraid to hear no. But then when I started asking, it was like, oh, sometimes it's yes. And those are fun opportunities.
Well, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is no, which you're getting anyway if you're not, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I get it. Like, we all hate rejection, and it would have sucked if it had been like, sorry, we can't involve you. But like, otherwise, yeah, you're stuck. So
the sump pump agrees.
The sump pump is all over there.
So Jen, Gabe and I both have daughters. There's 4 daughters between us. My daughters are a bit younger than Gabe's. What advice would you give to young women who have this like inkling inside of them about the world of STEM or about the world of weather? What is like the first step you would advise someone to take to learn more and to kind of like grow into this maybe quote unquote fear of trying something new in a new world?
Asking, finding people who you emulate or who do things you think are fascinatingly cool, and reaching out would be my first, because I think one of the biggest limiting beliefs is that we are all alone here. We don't see people who look like us, or they're not doing what we're interested in. I've actually had a couple of conversations recently with younger women on social media. One reached out and said, I started in meteorology and then moved into journalism, and I have beat the bushes down in terms of who is out there, who does this. I can't find a job. And so the second part of that is, if it doesn't exist and it's in your head, then create it. Like, especially right now, with so many changes going on in the field of science. So the first is finding people who will be in your corner, who you can ask questions of, whether it's somebody from Girls Who Chase, somebody in a different field of science. They're actually, most of them are waiting to hear from young women and would be happy to mentor or answer questions. Yeah, they're busy, but honestly, like, we all get why this matters, and nobody has to work that hard at it. So that would be my first thing, is you're not alone. Find the people and reach out. And also I would add, if it is weather that's of interest, I do a lot of connecting. So if you're looking for a contact and you feel like a cold email isn't going to get it done, please feel free to reach out and ask for an introduction or something like that. We're all happy to help with that. So that's the first thing. I think the second is, just because you're not seeing your people doesn't mean they're not there. And so that's another piece of it, is that you might have to work a little bit harder for one reason or another, or, try to use a network to begin that process. But they're there, I promise, even if it doesn't look like it. And if there's stuff going on where you're like, I don't feel like I belong here, or I don't fit in this world for one reason or another, then create your own space that feels right to you. Like, that was kind of what I felt like I had to do initially, because most of what I was seeing in all of this media about storm chasing was sort of the like windshield blowing, shouting, driving into circulation type crowd. And I still don't do that. In fact, I spend a lot of, like, an excessive amount of time driving away from hail course. Like sometimes hail course that form over my head for some reason. I still don't do that kind of stuff, and I don't know that I'll ever be that person. I want to be like peacefully sitting in a field taking pictures of structure. That's my thing. And just because, again, you're not seeing it, okay, then you do it. And maybe in so doing, you will create a small group of people who appreciate that about you or who want to join you in it. But oftentimes I find that in the act of doing it is when the community shows up. Like that's when you sort of wave your flag around and say, okay, I'm a structure hipster. Where are the other structure hipsters? You know, like, let's go. So that's kind of like, I think, the science side of it. But the other is that we just really want people to know that this is possible for them. It doesn't even have to be storm chasing, right? It's a great example because there's a lot going on that's difficult and hard and science to learn. And there's some fear involved, I think, for folks in terms of safety. And all of these things are entirely valid. Whatever it is about that thing, it could be, I don't know, coin collecting or, you know, pottery or skiing or like whatever, right? You name it. It's the act of starting it that creates the journey, if that makes sense. It's okay to not have a clue. Like nobody does. And if they tell you they do, they're lying. So that's, I guess that's my 5 cents. But in the end, yes, you can do anything. And, you know, there's a lot of living proof of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I find when I'm starting something new, kindness goes a long way for replacing competence, at least at the beginning. If I'm just like a nice guy, like it really goes a long way and people let you tag along. And then that experience comes with it. It just takes time.
And I think a lot of folks are looking for, like, they want to meet somebody who will take them chasing. And we do recommend that you go with an expert. Like, we're not saying just, oh, go find a storm and like drive in front of it and see what happens, right? But at the same time, I think for me, at some point you just have to get it. You just have to go. Mm-hmm. And even if you're 100 miles away, I mean, I was like a million miles away from that tornado, that first tornado. I was on the wrong side of the storm. Like I got lucky because there wasn't a ton of precip, so I was able to see it from my vantage point. But that's where the learning happens. That's where you recognize what you're capable of, what your comfort levels are. And if you're in there with someone, yeah, there's a ton to be learned, but at some point it has to come down to you and your interests and what you're after and what your goals are. Otherwise, I've just noticed that folks get disillusioned after a while because they're living someone else's pursuit in a way. And I guess that's what I mean by like, don't let anyone else tell you what your dream is, whatever that looks like. That's their dream for you. So, and those are two different things. It's great to, again, use expertise and work with people to get your start, but at some point you have to figure out your own why.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I do have one. Can I ask you guys one question?
Sure.
And we can either keep it or not. I'm always curious. So as emotionally intelligent, older, life experience male chasers watching all of this, what are your thoughts about what it takes for an initiative like Girls Who Chase and the cultural environment and how people like you can support, especially with daughters, right? So that thought process is already happening. I'm just curious, not to like push you on the spot.
Well, Gabe, I think you have direct experience.
Yeah, I mean, I take my daughters out storm chasing every now and then just for fun. Like I want to get them out there. I want them to experience the awe of Mother Nature, to look at this thing that's so grand and so much bigger than themselves, and to just enjoy the outdoors and hang out with them. I love it. And I posted a photo of one of the times that I took my youngest out, and it was one of the producers who was picking up Girls Who Chased. and doing a story for NBC News, and they found the photo and they said, we would love to interview your daughter. And that it opened up a door for her she didn't even know existed.
I love
and,
it.
She was out there with her little, $30 digital camera that she bought and taking photo and video on that, and they used it. And so I got to tell her, like, hey, that stuff's worth something, that has value. Let's learn how to broker to NBC News. And she made $300 off of her,
Amazing.
$20 or $30 camera. And, getting to share just a fun experience on air and, see herself with you and the other women on that story. It just brought a lot of encouragement to her. And I think, to see that something that she filmed had value. I mean, I don't know if I'm even answering your question, but it was such an awesome moment for me to step back and be like, this is not about the dad who took his daughter out storm chasing. This is about the daughter who's getting to experience something new and fresh. And thanks to Girls Who Chase, that was a door that was opened. No one would have seen that moment. No one would have seen her footage if it wasn't for Girls Who Chased.
I mean, you're encouraging interest, right? It's interesting that you mentioned that. I was thinking as you were talking, Gabe, that one of our most engaged audiences is dads of girls. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And not mothers of girls, but dads of girls. Because, I mean, the notes I've gotten are like, thank you for creating something that I can show my girls to show them that this is doable for them. And thank you for creating an environment that's conducive for them to feel like they belong and learn. I'm so worried, kind of thing. So it's interesting that you chose that moment to mention, because that pretty much nails, I think, a chunk of the communications I've had with folks.
Yeah. And I know it's the same for you, Jeremy. We've had these discussions before and wanting to create those opportunities for your daughters.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at the stage where I feel my role right now is to just be empathetic and think about my story as a young boy who was terrified of, thunder, lightning, tornadoes. I grew up in Nebraska. Tornado sirens were tested every week. So I heard that ominous sound and just the fear I felt. And my parents did their best. But I was still so uncertain and ignorant of like what was happening. And so I think my role right now with my young daughters, my 4.5-year-old in particular, is to show excitement when like thunderstorms are around, and to, point out things and like, whoa, wasn't that cool? We just saw a cloud to ground lightning, and to just begin to grow her awareness. And obviously instill, a layer of safety as well in the equation. But yeah, just thinking back again to that kind of frightened little kid that still lives inside of me, that's still there, that I think was just waiting, for someone to explain things, and to let him know what was happening. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we're all just working out how to navigate that little person inside of us. So yeah, that's really my guiding principle right now, and I'm excited to see how my daughters grow up. They could grow up and totally not be interested, and whatever they're interested in, I'll be in their corner and there for them. So yeah, who knows? It
is a strength. And interestingly, I've heard several origin stories that start with a parent or a relative who pointed out storms, or in some cases took them to see tornadoes. A lot of meteorology origin stories for that one. But the other thing I think that I've noticed is this notion of like, knowledge is power and also lessens fear. So if you understand what brings about the thing that brings fear to you, right? What causes tornadoes, or like whatever it is, then the fear dissipates because you're not just reacting to it. You actually are like, okay, this is what it would take to actually get a tornado. Here's how I stay safe from it, right? So some ability to respond based on the knowledge that you've amassed really does kind of disintegrate a lot of that knee-jerk sort of fight or flight, I've noticed. I'm just a big proponent of education for everyone. One of my scientist friends taught me to read radar in like 2013, 2014. And so I would just sit and watch things, basically. And in 2017, May 2017, my job was in Lakewood, which is southwest suburb of Denver. And I walked out of a restaurant at lunch with a friend and it was green, like a color I had never seen before, green. And I opened up radar scope, which is a lot blockier at the time. It's funny looking back at those photos. And there was just a giant white blob that was like, I was like at ground zero. The thing was like coming. And I said, oh my God, we have got to find a parking garage. Like, this is not good. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how bad it was. I just knew it was white and that meant hail. And I ended up sitting in a parking garage at Colorado Mills Mall, which was ground zero for Colorado's costliest hailstorm-related natural disaster.
Wow.
And I have video shooting out of this garage with these giant, like, tennis balls exploding on the ground, and then drove back to the office afterward, and every car in my office parking lot was totaled, except for mine.
Wow.
So it's stuff like that, right? You don't even have to plan to storm chase, but learning how to read radar or recognize the signs of severe weather could ultimately save your vehicle, right? Just keep your family safe. Like, you just don't know what you might be encountering. And I always look back on that moment as like, it almost feels like I now have this seventh sense, right? Where you better understand the environment around you and it matters, that kind of stuff. So. Yes,
knowledge is power, and knowledge also frees up your local residential storm chaser from having to answer so many texts during severe weather.
What's happening? Should I go inside?
What do I do?
What do I do? Cover the garden. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not responsible for you.
Yes.
It's a real genuine benefit to any community that you're in to be a resource in that way. You know, it's truly practical.
Yes. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jen. Is there anything you'd like to point our listeners to on the web?
Absolutely. And thanks very much for having me. And those were good questions. I appreciate it. So if you are interested in Girls Who Chase, the best place to find all of our various links to things, including social media and everything, is on our website, the homepage of our website, which is girlswhochase.com. If you are interested in engaging with us, or if you are a female chaser and you didn't know we existed, we also love content contributions because we will share that on our platforms and point back to you. So we're not here to basically gain followers. We're here to send followers to other chasers. That's kind of the difference here for us. So all of those handles are Girls Who Chase. We are most active right now on Instagram. That's our largest account, as well as Blue Sky and Facebook. I kind of use those platforms for a variety of different things. We're also doing coverage of the field campaign this year, the Ice Chip field campaign. So if you want to learn more about that, that's also a good place to do it. So I would start there. If you're interested in resources, educational resources, we have amassed a comprehensive, to our knowledge, list of largely free educational resources at girlswhochase.com/education. So if you want to know kind of what does it take, like if you want to dip your toe in the water or just see how sciencey everything is, I would definitely go check that stuff out. We point to some really great storm chasing resources like Tornado Titans University with great video clips, Skip Talbot's educational videos on positioning and storm spotting, stuff like that. So you can kind of learn all the various elements that go into storm chasing outside of just basic forecasting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Jen, for joining us. And thank you for listening to StormReel. Please, if you could, rate, review, and subscribe. And if the place you're listening has a little bell icon, hit that and you'll get news of when each new StormReel episode releases. Thank you, Orograph, for the use of our theme song, Metamorism, and you can find that song and album streaming everywhere. You can find us everywhere online at the StormReel and at stormreel.com. For StormReel, I've been Jeremy Hamann, joined by Gabe Cox. We'll talk soon.
This episode was made in part by the generous support of our newest subscriber, Cassie. Thanks for being a part of the StormReel family, and remember to keep looking up.